Hi all and welcome back to the channel. In today's topic we'll cover the Tarawa update in the latest 2.5.6 Open Beta. There have been some significant changes to the way that AI can utilise the deck. So I'm going to show you those in a little bit more detail throughout the rest of the video. There are a few issues that I've noticed, and I don't know whether they're bugs or whether it's set up that way, but we'll talk about them in a little bit more detail. So I'll show you how to set the Tarawa up within the mission editor, and then we'll watch what happens with the potential bugs, stroke, issues that I've found. So I hope you enjoy. Here we are in the mission editor. What I've done is I have set up 3 Tarawas, all doing around about 12 knots. I've only given them one waypoint in the distance there. And on this particular Tarawa, I have set the aircraft to take off from ramp. Doesn't really matter what you do with the AV-8Bs, whether you select take off from ramp, take off from parking hot, take off from runway, doesn't really matter. They will all start lined up on the runway as you see them here. You used to be able to start them here on the ramp, and then you'd be able to taxi out. But the AI aircraft, all of them start here on the runway. So it doesn't really matter what you select by the type from here. So with this particular AV-8B, I have put in no loadout. So it's a completely clean aircraft with 100% fuel, and that's for all 4 of them. The next Tarawa in the sequence is exactly the same, doing 12 knots, going in the same direction, and I've added AI helicopters. Obviously I've reskinned it using the navy colours, but there's 3 helicopters on the deck. What I've done is, on the helicopters, I've set them to uncontrolled, to test uncontrolled. So can we have uncontrolled starts for helicopters and AV-8Bs on the Tarawa? And the next test is on the 3rd Tarawa. I set up further AV-8Bs. I've asked them to be uncontrolled and take off from the ramp. And basically they have a full loadout. Now what I've done here is I've set the maximum weight to 25,902, which the internal fuel level at 82%. I'll explain why I've done that a little bit later. But as you can see, they have a full loadout of 65Es with some sidearms and a lightning pod and a gun pod, so reasonably well armed. So now let's go into the mission itself and see how well all 3 elements perform. Sorry, there's one element I did forget to mention. I'll set up the weather. The weather I set up as standard for the 21st of June, 8 AM in the morning, and I set the wind speed at 9 knots at 33 feet, 19 knots at 1600 feet, 10 at 6600 and 10 at 26,000. I've given the direction of 46 degrees for the wind, and as you can see here, when you change the 33 foot mark, it also changes the 1600 foot mark. Now this is very important because I'll highlight this in a little bit later on in the video, but I've set it to 9 and 19 because that is the ideal situation to avoid a bug with more wind speed at 1600 feet, or maybe it's, I don't know, maybe it's actually a part and parcel of the actual AV-8B itself and it's supposed to behave that way, but I'll explain a little bit later. So that's how I've set up the weather. Okay, so here we are on the deck. These are the unarmed aircraft. And basically what they will do is they will start up on the deck, as I mentioned, all on the runway, but because they are unarmed, they will take off vertically. So let's watch that in action. There we go, airborne from the deck, and then on the merry way. So that's an improvement, a considerable improvement over the historic Tarawa. Now then, I have noticed a bug that impacts the vertical takeoff, and I'll show you that now. Okay, and here's the problem. I've now increased the wind speed at 1600 feet to be 21 knots. And let's see what happens when the Harriers try to take off vertically. And there we go. There's the bug stroke issue. They fall straight through the deck. So my advice to you guys and gals is don't set your wind speed above 21 knots or even at 21 knots. Otherwise the same thing will happen. So that's the bug stroke issue that I found during my testing. And now we're on the deck of another Tarawa. This is the one with all the aircraft fully armed. They were an uncontrolled start, and as you can see, the push task worked. So therefore you can push task a start for the AV-8B. Now obviously this will be a rolling start because the aircraft is fully armed, and we'll see that in action very shortly. Now then, this lead aircraft starts quite a long way up the deck, so it does take it a while to speed up significantly enough and gain enough altitude to actually put away its landing gear and go into proper flight. Now, it's not a bug, but if you overweigh this particular AV-8B, it will crash into the water, but the remaining three will take off properly. Now when this gets to around 81 knots, it will start to fold its gear and climb. So the maximum weight that you can have with a loadout is 25902 pounds. Otherwise it will end up in the drink. It takes a while for it to get up to the 81 knots. And there we go, 81 knots, gear starts to fold away, but because it's heavily laden, it takes a while. The remaining Harriers don't have such an issue. So there we go, here's the second one taking off. There we are, much quicker because it has a lot more run on the runway. And the third Harrier, again, because it has a much longer run-up, it should start to fold its gear relatively quickly and start to climb. So just bear that in mind when you're choosing your loadouts for your AV-8Bs for a rolling takeoff from the Tarawa. And here we are on the second Tarawa with the helicopters that were uncontrolled, and I've pushed an AI task push start, and that works. And as you can see, they now spawn on the bow of the boat, and they will eventually power themselves up and take off. So we know we can have uncontrolled starts of the AV-8B and the helicopters. I've only stuck 3 helicopters on, I've not stuck any more than that on, I've not tested that, but there don't appear to be any issues with the helicopters. So the centre one will take off first very shortly, and I'll show you that in action. And there we go, the rotors are spinning up. The helos do take a while. With the uncontrolled starts, you've got the benefit of a little bit more room for manoeuvre when you're building a mission, for actually starting up various AI flights. By the way, if you have 4 Harriers behind the helicopters, then the helicopters will take precedence, they will take off, and then they will be followed by the AI AV8Bs. And there we go, that's the helicopters. Okay, so we've concentrated on takeoffs. Now let's have a look at landing. Basically what I've set up is a Tarawa with 4 Harriers, AV8Bs on the deck. They are set up as takeoff from parking hot. And I've given them 4 waypoints, each at 2,000 feet. And they will fly a circuit pattern and then come round again, fly into the circuit for landing and come down and land. So I'll show you that taking place right now. Let's go into sim. And here we are back in the sim with the AV8B stroke Harrier fast approaching the Tarawa deck. As you can see, it's approaching offset as it should do, because that's what's happening in real life. It will come to a hover and stop, and then slide across to the deck. Bear in mind that I've kept the wind the same, so it's at 19 knots, so there is no impact there. Haven't tried it any higher than 19 knots, bit of a waste of time because you can't take off vertically above 19 knots. It will glide gently to the deck and then bump when it hits. There we go. And then taxis off to park up. And the remaining aircraft will do exactly the same. Much improved yet again. Okay, here we are in the mission builder again. What I've done this time, I'm going to show you how to set up the helicopters and show you how they land as soon as we've seen them take off. So essentially what I've got here is I've got the Tarawa deck. I've got 3 helicopters. They are all set to, let's have a look, they are all set to take off from parking hot again. I've given them multiple waypoints to fly a pattern so that they come in and then land at waypoint 5. So, as we can see, I've kept the wind the same, 10, 10, 19, 9. No change there, and no issues created that I've seen so far in testing. So, let's see that in sim. And here we are back in sim with the helicopters, 3 helicopters, fast approaching the Tarawa deck. Again, they're approaching offset, which is as it should be. Now I've had to utilise 3 UH1s here because the UH60 that I used previously, for some reason, doesn't end up with a landing waypoint that incorporates the ship. It only goes to a airbase. So I swapped it out for the UH1s in this particular instance, and it works just fine. Sliding across to the deck now, preparing for a final touchdown. Also bear in mind that I obviously have the ship moving, so it might take the AI a little while to adjust to get down into a landing spot. And there we go, first bird down. And that's the last 2 helicopters down. And there we go. That's the helicopters landing on the Tarawa deck. In the right places. So I hope you found this video particularly useful or helpful. And I hope you have fun with the Tarawa now. Not sure if it works in multiplayer, but you guys can test it out. So thank you for watching again, and I'll see you later.